I walked into my parents' kitchen and found my daughter crying alone while her cousins ate ice cream. That's the moment I knew my family was done. My parents used my money to spoil their favorite grandkids and treated my kid like a burden, so I cut them off. What came next destroyed their facade. I, a 35-year-old male, work as a senior portfolio manager at a large investment firm here in Phoenix. I make about $195,000 annually, which gives me a very comfortable life. I worked my ass off to get here. I started as a junior analyst, making $45,000 right out of college. Pulled 70-hour weeks for years, earned my CFA certification, and slowly climbed the ladder. My colleagues respect me. My clients trust me with their money, and I genuinely love the analytical challenge of portfolio optimization. I've been single for the past 5 years after my previous relationship ended badly. When my ex decided she wanted to find herself by sleeping with half the guys in our friend group, that betrayal really messed me up for a while. I trusted her completely. I was even looking at engagement rings. And then I discovered she'd been cheating for months. The worst part wasn't just the infidelity. It was how she tried to gaslight me into thinking I was controlling and emotionally unavailable when I confronted her about it. After that disaster, I threw myself into work and honestly became pretty isolated. I was spending most weekends alone, ordering takeout, and binge-watching shows. My life felt empty and meaningless. I had money, a nice house, and a successful career. But I'd come home to silence every night. I'd see families at restaurants or parks and feel this hollow ache in my chest. My therapist really pushed me during one session. Ryan, you're financially successful, but emotionally bankrupt. You're hiding from life because one person hurt you. That's not living. That's just existing. She was right, and it stung. She suggested I try volunteering somewhere to get out of my own head and maybe find some purpose beyond profit margins and stock portfolios. So, I started spending Saturday mornings at a local children's home, helping with activities and just being present for kids who needed positive male role models. The first few weeks were awkward as hell. I had no idea how to talk to kids. I felt like they could sense I was this uptight finance guy trying too hard. But the staff was patient with me, and gradually I started relaxing around the children. That's where I met Emma. She was barely 2 years old when I first saw her sitting alone in the corner of the playroom while other kids ran around laughing and playing. She had these enormous green eyes and the most serious expression I'd ever seen on such a young face. While other toddlers were having meltdowns or demanding attention, Emma just sat quietly watching everything with this intense focus that seemed way too mature for her age. Her caseworker, Janet, told me Emma had been in the system since she was 6 months old after her birth parents lost custody due to drug addiction. She's been through 4 different foster homes, Janet explained. She's not a problem child or anything. She's actually remarkably well-behaved, but she's so quiet and withdrawn that families tend to overlook her for more outgoing kids. No relatives wanted to take her in. Her maternal grandmother said she was too old to start over with a baby, and her father's family wanted nothing to do with her. Something about this tiny girl just grabbed my heart and wouldn't let go. She was so quiet and careful, like she was afraid of taking up too much space in the world. I started requesting to work, specifically with the younger kids, just so I could spend time with her. Over the months, she slowly started warming up to me. I remember the exact moment she first smiled at me. I was reading Goodnight Moon to a group of toddlers, and Emma had positioned herself just close enough to hear, but far enough away to escape if needed. When I got to the part about the quiet old lady whispering hush, I whispered it really dramatically, and Emma's serious little face broke into this tiny secret smile. My heart completely melted. From there, it was tiny steps. She'd sit a little closer during story time. Then she'd actually approach me during activities. One day, she brought me a drawing she'd made, just scribbles to anyone else, but she very seriously explained it was a house with a daddy and a little girl. I still have that drawing framed in my office. The breakthrough came about 6 months in. Emma had fallen and scraped her knee during outdoor play, and while the other staff members tried to comfort her, she pushed past them and ran straight to me, arms up, wanting me to hold her. As I cleaned her knee and put on a band-aid, she looked up at me and said, "Ryan, will you be my daddy?" I had to excuse myself and go cry in the bathroom for 10 minutes. After about 8 months of building this relationship, I realized I wanted to adopt her. The social workers were initially skeptical because I was a single man with no parenting experience, but I had stable income, owned my house outright, and had passed all their background checks during my volunteer screening. The adoption process was incredibly lengthy and expensive, nearly $12,000 in legal fees, home studies, court costs, and various other requirements. I had to take parenting classes, undergo psychological evaluations, and endure multiple home inspections where they scrutinized everything from my kitchen cabinet locks to my internet browsing history. The worst part was the waiting periods between each step, wondering if some bureaucrat would decide I wasn't suitable parent material. There were moments I'd lie awake at night, terrified that Emma would be adopted by someone else while I was stuck in paperwork purgatory. Janet reassured me that Emma had shown clear attachment to me and that the agency preferred to honor those bonds when possible, but the anxiety was brutal. I'll never forget the court hearing where the adoption was finalized. Emma wore this little blue dress we'd picked out together, and she was so excited she kept bouncing in her seat. When the judge asked if she wanted me to be her daddy forever, she practically shouted, "Yes." The entire courtroom was smiling, and I was trying not to ugly cry in front of everyone. But every penny and every stressful moment was worth it. The day I brought Emma home was absolutely the best day of my entire life. She walked into my house carrying her little suitcase and her stuffed bunny, looked around and asked, "Is this really my home now, Daddy?" I nearly broke down crying right there. The first few weeks were an adjustment for both of us. Emma would wake up some mornings and seemed surprised to still be there, like she expected this to be temporary, too. She was almost too well-behaved, afraid that any mistake might get her sent away. It took months of consistency and patience for her to really believe this was permanent. That was 4 years ago, and she's now 6 years old and the absolute center of my universe. She's blossomed into this incredible little person. Curious, kind, funny in ways that catch me off guard. She loves art projects, gets excited about nature documentaries, and has strong opinions about which breakfast cereals are acceptable. Apparently, Lucky Charms are too sugary, but Fruit Loops are perfectly balanced. Watching her grow and discover herself has been the greatest privilege of my life. Now, here's where I need to explain my family situation because it's important context for everything that happened later. My parents, Robert and Linda, are basically professional moochers who have spent most of their adult lives looking for easy money instead of actually working for it. Dad used to work in car sales, but got fired from multiple dealerships for being lazy and unreliable. He'd show up late, leave early, and then act shocked when customers complained about his lack of follow-through. Mom worked part-time as a receptionist at various offices, but would quit whenever she decided the job was beneath her standards. I have vivid memories from childhood of them constantly scheming for their next windfall. Dad would spend hours researching get-rich-quick schemes, pyramid schemes, cryptocurrency investments, and real estate flipping programs he saw on late-night TV. Mom would guilt-trip elderly relatives for loans they never intended to repay. They taught me and Meredith that smart people work the system, not for the system, which sounds inspiring until you realize it's just code for be a parasite. They've been living off unemployment benefits, occasional inheritance money from relatives, and constant handouts from family members for years. They live way beyond their means, always buying expensive things they can't afford, and then crying poverty when the bills come due. Their house is filled with luxury items they purchased during brief periods of financial optimism, a $3,000 leather sectional, a 75-inch TV, designer handbags that cost more than most people's rent. My younger sister, Meredith, is somehow even worse. She's 29 years old and has never held a steady job for more than 6 months. She has 2 daughters, Bella, who's 8, and Zoe, who's 6, from 2 different relationships with guys who both disappeared when things got serious. Meredith lives in a rundown apartment and constantly begs everyone in the family for money, claiming she's just going through a rough patch that's been lasting for basically her entire adult life. Meredith has mastered the art of emotional manipulation. She'll call crying about how she can't afford groceries for the girls, then post Instagram photos the next day of her new acrylic nails or a night out at some trendy bar. When confronted about these inconsistencies, she'll deflect with accusations that people are judging her or don't understand how hard it is to be a single mom. Her kids are completely spoiled because my parents shower them with gifts and attention to compensate for their unstable home life. Bella and Zoe expect to get new toys every time they visit, special trips to fun places, and constant praise for doing absolutely nothing special. They've learned to weaponize their cuteness, putting on dramatic performances about being poor and needing help when they want something. When I first told my family about adopting Emma, their reaction was disgusting. Why would you waste your money on someone else's problem child when you could find a nice woman and have your own kids? My mother said right in front of Emma during one of our first family visits. My dad was even more blunt. "She's not really your daughter, Ryan. It's not the same as having your own blood." I'll never forget Emma's face during that first family dinner. She was 3 years old, excited to meet her new grandparents, wearing a little yellow dress she picked out specifically for the occasion. She'd practiced saying, "Hi, Grandma," "Hi, Grandpa," in the car on the way over, but they barely acknowledged her existence, responding to her enthusiastic greeting with dismissive nods before immediately asking me about my plans for finding a real family. The favoritism was immediate and cruel. During that same visit, Bella and Zoe arrived and were greeted with squeals of excitement, hugs, kisses, and immediate presence. Emma watched from the corner, clutching my hand as her cousins got showered with affection, while she was completely ignored. When she tried to join in their play, Bella actually said, "You can't play with us. Grandma said you're not really family." But here's the thing that really gets me angry. Once they realized how much money I was making and how financially stable I was, suddenly they became very interested in maintaining a close relationship with me. Not with Emma, mind you, just with me and my bank account. They'd invite me over for family dinners and completely ignore Emma, while fawning over Meredith's kids. They'd make comments about how successful I'd become and how proud they were, which was code for, "We need money, and you're our best bet." The manipulation was so obvious, it was almost insulting. My mother would call and start conversations with, "Oh, I was just thinking about what a wonderful provider you've become," before launching into some financial crisis. Dad would corner me at family gatherings to ask detailed questions about my salary and investment portfolio, all while Emma sat alone at the kids' table being ignored by her cousins. They'd guilt-trip me about family loyalty while treating my daughter like she was invisible. "Family takes care of family" became my mother's favorite phrase, usually delivered while Emma was within earshot. The message was clear. I was family and had obligations, but Emma was just some outsider who happened to live with me. When I bring Emma to family gatherings, she tries so hard to get their attention and approval, but they'd barely acknowledge her existence. She'd draw them pictures that they'd glance at and set aside. She'd try to help in the kitchen only to be told she was in the way. She'd attempt to join conversations only to have them talk over her like she wasn't there. I watched my bright, confident daughter slowly become more subdued and anxious around my family. She'd prepare for visits by asking what she could do to make them like her more. "Daddy, should I draw Grandpa a picture of his car? Maybe if I'm really good, Grandma will want to play with me." It was heartbreaking. About 2.5 years ago, my parents came to me with tears in their eyes, claiming they were about to lose their house. Dad's latest unemployment benefits had run out. Mom couldn't find work anywhere. She'd applied to maybe 4 places total, and they were 3 months behind on their mortgage payments. "Ryan, we don't know what else to do." My mother sobbed dramatically. "We're going to lose everything. This house has all our memories, all your childhood memories. You're the only one who can save us." My dad played up the guilt angle. "Son, we raised you in this house. We sacrificed so much to give you a good foundation. Now, we need you to help us keep it." The performance was Oscar-worthy. Mom had clearly been crying before I arrived, her makeup strategically smudged. Dad had gathered stacks of bills and foreclosure notices, arranging them dramatically on the kitchen table like evidence in a trial. They'd even included photos of me as a child around the house, subtle reminders of our shared history. Their mortgage payment was $2,600 per month, which they obviously couldn't afford on their non-existent income. They promised they'd pay me back as soon as they got back on their feet, swearing it would only be temporary until they found stable work. They had a whole timeline mapped out. Dad would find a sales job within 2 months. Mom would go back to administrative work, and they'd be financially independent by Christmas. I was making good money and wanted Emma to have a relationship with her extended family. So, like an idiot, I agreed to take over their mortgage payments. I set up automatic transfers from my account to theirs every month. But that was just the beginning of what would become a financial nightmare. Soon the emergency calls started coming regularly. Car repairs that cost $1,400 because Dad refused to take their luxury sedan anywhere but the dealership. Medical bills for $950 for Mom's specialist appointments that turned out to be cosmetic procedures. Home repairs that somehow cost $2,200 because they hired the most expensive contractors instead of shopping around. Meredith's rent when she got evicted, which was $1,650 plus a security deposit for her new place. Then there were the grocery bills because they were struggling to eat, which somehow cost $600 per month. When I offered to take them shopping at Walmart, they were offended. "We're not poor people, Ryan. We have standards." Apparently, those standards included organic produce, premium steaks, and name brand everything, all on my dime. I was basically supporting 3 households on my salary, shelling out nearly $7,500 monthly to keep my family afloat. That's $90,000 per year of my post-tax income going to people who showed zero gratitude and treated my daughter like garbage. Did they show any gratitude? Absolutely not. The handouts became expected like I owed them this money. They'd call me demanding cash like it was my obligation. "Ryan, we need $700 for groceries and gas this month." Not asking politely but telling me like it was a given. There was never any acknowledgement that I was sacrificing my own financial security for their comfort. The absolute worst part was discovering what they were spending the money on. While crying poverty to me, they were taking Bella and Zoe on expensive outings. Six Flags trips that cost $200 plus shopping sprees at Target where they'd buy $500 worth of toys, meals at restaurants that cost more than what I'd spend feeding Emma and myself for a week. When I questioned these expenses, my mother would get defensive. "Those girls deserve nice things. They're going through a hard time with Meredith's situation. We're just trying to give them some stability and happiness." Meanwhile, Emma would watch these adventures through their social media posts, wondering why she never got invited to be part of the stability and happiness. Meanwhile, every time I brought Emma to family gatherings, the favoritism was disgusting to watch. Bella and Zoe would get brand new toys every single visit. Expensive stuff my parents definitely couldn't afford but were buying with money I gave them. We're talking $50 Barbie playsets, $80 Lego sets, American Girl doll accessories that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. They take the girls on special outings to amusement parks, movies, restaurants, always excluding Emma. I remember one particularly awful Christmas morning when Emma was 4. She'd been so excited about spending the holiday with her grandparents and cousins talking about it for weeks. She'd made handmade gifts for everyone, painted rocks for my parents, friendship bracelets for Bella and Zoe. She'd carefully wrapped them in tissue paper and put them under the tree. Bella and Zoe each received piles of presents, tablets, expensive clothes, jewelry, games, toys. The scene looked like a toy store had exploded. Emma sat there with her one small gift, a generic coloring book, and crayons that were clearly an afterthought, watching her cousins tear through wrapping paper while squealing with excitement. When Emma tried to join in their activities or play with the toys they bought for her cousins, my parents would make comments like, "Be very careful with that. It's not yours," or "Those are special toys for special girls." Emma would sit there watching her cousins get all this attention and love while being completely ignored. The comments became increasingly pointed over time. "Well, some children appreciate what they're given," my mother would say when Emma expressed any disappointment. "Some children understand that treats are earned, not expected." The implication was clear. Emma hadn't earned the same treatment because she wasn't really family. When Emma tried to show them her artwork from school, they'd barely glance at it. But when Bella or Zoe brought home any scrap of paper with crayon marks, it would get enthusiastic praise and prominent display on the refrigerator. Emma started keeping her art projects to herself after a while, showing them only to me. The worst part was the constant comments about her adoption status. "Well, it's different with real family," they'd say right in front of her. Or, "Blood relatives have a special connection that can't be replicated." Emma was too young to fully understand what they meant, but I could see it hurt her feelings and made her try even harder to win their approval. One day, Emma asked me, "Daddy, what does real family mean? Grandma says Bella and Zoe are real family, but I'm not. Does that mean I'm fake?" I had to explain that some people have small hearts and don't understand that families are made by love, not just DNA. But it killed me that she even had to ask that question. The emotional damage was becoming obvious. Emma, who had been gaining confidence and personality since I adopted her, started becoming withdrawn and anxious before family visits. She'd spend hours getting ready, trying to pick the perfect outfit to win their approval. She'd practice conversation topics in the car, hoping to find something that would make them pay attention to her. After visits, she'd be quiet and sad for days. She'd ask questions like, "Why don't they like me?" and "What can I do to make them love me?" It was heartbreaking to watch this confident, creative child blame herself for other people's cruelty. 3 months ago, I had an absolutely crucial day at work. We were finalizing a major client portfolio restructuring that could potentially lead to a promotion and significant bonus. This wasn't just any client. We were talking about a $200 million portfolio for a tech company going public. And I'd been working on this account for 8 months. The presentation had to be perfect. The numbers had to be flawless. And the client meetings couldn't be rescheduled. I had back-to-back meetings scheduled from 7 in the morning until nearly 9 at night, including client presentations, contract negotiations, and team coordination sessions. My boss had made it clear that this was a make-or-break opportunity. "Ryan, if we land this account, you're looking at a promotion to vice president level and a 6-figure bonus. If we lose it because of any preventable screw-ups, there will be consequences." My regular babysitter, Mrs. Chen, caught the flu and had to cancel last minute. She called me at 5:30 a.m. barely able to speak, apologizing profusely. I was completely stuck and starting to panic because this work commitment was non-negotiable. I called every backup sitter I could think of, but it was too short notice. My neighbor wasn't available. My backup sitter was out of town, and professional child care services needed 24-hour advance booking. Against every instinct I had, I decided to ask my parents if Emma could spend the day at their house. I'd avoided leaving her alone with them for any extended period because of their obvious favoritism, but I was desperate and running out of time. When I called my mother at 6 a.m., she sounded almost enthusiastic about the idea. "Of course, bring her over early. Meredith is dropping off Bella and Zoe for the day, too, so all 3 girls can play together and bond. It'll be perfect. Maybe this will finally give us a chance to get to know Emma better." I should have recognized this as a red flag, but I was stressed about work and running out of options. The idea of Emma spending quality time with her cousins actually sounded nice. And maybe this would finally be the day my parents would step up and act like proper grandparents. Maybe they'd realize how wonderful Emma was if they spent real time with her. That morning, I packed Emma's little pink backpack with her favorite toys, some snacks, extra clothes in case they went to the park, and her special stuffed bunny for comfort. She was absolutely thrilled about spending the whole day with Bella and Zoe. Daddy, maybe today Grandma and Grandpa will play games with me like they do with my cousins. Maybe we'll bake cookies or they'll read me stories, she said with such hope in her voice that it made my heart ache. I dropped her off around 6:30 in the morning, kissed her goodbye, and promised I'd pick her up after my meetings finished. She ran into the house excitedly, ready for what she thought would be a fun day with family. I watched her skip through their front door and felt optimistic for the first time about her relationship with my parents. The workday was absolutely brutal. Meeting after meeting, putting out fires, dealing with difficult clients who kept changing their requirements. The portfolio negotiations went much longer than expected because the client's board kept requesting modifications to our risk assessment models. I barely had time to grab a sandwich for lunch, much less call to check on Emma. By 3 p.m., I was starting to worry about how she was doing, but I was in the middle of a critical presentation to the client's executive team. I sent a quick text to my mother. "How's Emma doing? Having fun with the girls?" I got back a simple "fine. All good here," which should have been reassuring, but felt oddly brief. The afternoon stretched into evening as the client requested additional financial projections and risk analyses. My team was scrambling to run new models, and I was fielding constant questions about portfolio allocation strategies. By 7 p.m., I was emotionally and physically drained, but we were finally making progress toward closing the deal. I texted my parents again, running late. "We'll pick up Emma by 9 o'clock. Hope she's not too tired." This time, I got no response, which was unusual, but I figured they were probably busy with bedtime routines. When we finally wrapped up around 8:45 p.m., it was with a tentative handshake deal worth millions to our firm. My boss clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Outstanding work today, Ryan. This is going to change your career trajectory." I should have been ecstatic, but all I could think about was getting to Emma and hearing about her day. I was exhausted, but also excited to pick up Emma and hear all about her day with her cousins. I imagine her telling me about games they played, stories Grandma read them, maybe even that my parents had finally shown her some real affection and attention. Perhaps they'd taken the girls to the park or baked cookies together, or just spent time playing and bonding. When I pulled into my parents' driveway around 9:15 p.m., I could hear voices coming from inside the house through the front windows. They sounded loud and angry, which seemed weird for what should have been a quiet evening with tired kids. The lights were all on, which was also strange since it was well past the girls' usual bedtime. I walked up to the front door and could hear my mother's voice clearly, angrier than I'd ever heard her before in my life. "Wash those dishes properly. Good grief, you're so useless. Look at this mess you're making. No wonder nobody wanted you before Ryan took pity on you." My stomach dropped. Who was she screaming at like that? I opened the front door and walked inside, and what I saw made me feel physically sick. There was my 6-year-old Emma standing on a wooden step stool at the kitchen sink, her little arms elbow-deep in soapy water, washing what looked like dinner dishes and several pots and pans. She was crying silently, tears streaming down her red face as she struggled to scrub a large serving bowl that was almost too heavy for her to hold safely. Her clothes were completely soaked with soap and water. Her hair was messy and wet with soap suds clinging to the strands. She was shaking from exhaustion and probably hunger since it was way past dinner time and she was still working. Her little hands were pruned and red from being in hot soapy water for what must have been hours. Meanwhile, Bella and Zoe were in the living room sprawled on the couch in matching new pajamas, watching television and eating ice cream sundaes with whipped cream and cherries. Brand new toys were scattered around them, obviously expensive stuff that my parents had bought them with the money I'd been sending. They were pointing at Emma and giggling at her struggles, making comments like, "Look how slow she is," and "She's getting water everywhere." My parents were standing in the kitchen doorway watching Emma work, making critical comments about her technique and speed. "Scrub harder. That's still dirty. How long does it take to wash one simple bowl? Maybe if you weren't so clumsy, this would go faster." "What is going on here?" I said loudly, and everyone turned to look at me. Emma saw me and immediately started sobbing harder. "Daddy, I try to do it right, but I'm not good at it. I've been trying so hard, but they keep saying I'm doing it wrong." I rushed over and lifted her down from the stool, and she was trembling all over. Her little hands were wrinkled and red from being in hot soapy water for hours. She smelled like dish detergent and looked absolutely exhausted. She immediately wrapped her arms around my neck and buried her face in my shoulder, sobbing. "Why is my daughter washing dishes while her cousins are eating ice cream and watching TV?" I asked my parents, trying to keep my voice calm, but failing completely. The rage was building inside me like a volcano about to erupt. My mother rolled her eyes at me like I was being ridiculous. "Oh, please, Ryan, don't be so dramatic. We're teaching her some responsibility and work ethic. Kids these days are too spoiled and entitled." A little hard work never hurt anyone. My father nodded in agreement. She needs to learn her place in this family structure. Bella and Zoe don't have to do chores because they're real granddaughters with real family connections. Emma should be grateful we're teaching her valuable life skills that will help her later. Real granddaughters. There it was, finally said out loud after 4 years of subtle hints and implications. Emma wasn't really family to them. She was just some charity case I'd forced them to tolerate. And they thought she should be grateful for any attention at all, even if that attention was being treated like household help. Her place, I repeated, feeling rage building up inside me like nothing I'd ever experienced. She's 6 years old. Her place is playing with toys and being a kid, not scrubbing dishes while you spoil Meredith's children. My mother got defensive and started making excuses. Don't make this into something it's not, Ryan. We fed her lunch, and she was playing earlier. We just asked her to help clean up after dinner. It's perfectly reasonable to expect children to clean up after themselves. That was complete garbage, and everyone knew it. Emma is the most careful, neat child in the world. She never makes messes because she's always trying so hard to be perfect and not cause any trouble. But even if she had made a mess, making a 6-year-old wash a sink full of dishes while the other kids get treats and entertainment is just cruel. You know what? I said, grabbing Emma's backpack from the counter. You're absolutely right. She doesn't belong here because she deserves so much better than this treatment. My father actually had the nerve to say, well, maybe you should have thought about that before forcing someone else's unwanted child into our family dynamic. That was the final straw. I picked up Emma, grabbed her things, and headed for the door. As I was leaving, I turned back and said, don't ever contact me again. We're done. The drive home was heartbreaking. Emma was quiet for most of the trip, just staring out the window with this lost, confused expression. Finally, she asked in her small voice, Daddy, why don't Grandma and Grandpa love me like they love Bella and Zoe? What did I do wrong? How do you explain to a 6-year-old that some people are just small-minded and cruel? How do you tell your daughter that the people who should love her unconditionally have decided she's not worth their affection because she doesn't share their DNA? You didn't do anything wrong, sweetheart, I told her. Some people just don't know how to see how special and wonderful you are. But I love you more than anything in the whole world, and that's what really matters. That night, after putting Emma to bed, I sat in my home office and made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to continue financially supporting people who treated my daughter like she was worthless. If they couldn't love Emma, they didn't deserve anything from me. The next morning, I called my bank and canceled all automatic transfers to my parents' account. I also called my credit card company and canceled the emergency card I'd given them for unexpected expenses. Then I called the joint account I'd set up for their monthly allowances and closed it completely. I didn't warn them or give them notice. I wanted them to discover the cutoff on their own and really feel the impact of losing their financial safety net. It took exactly 4 months for the first panic phone call. My father called me in a complete frenzy because the bank had sent them a formal foreclosure notice after several missed mortgage payments. Ryan, there's been some kind of mistake with the mortgage payment. It didn't go through for months, and the bank is starting foreclosure proceedings. That's not a mistake, I said calmly. I canceled all the payments. You're completely on your own now. Dead silence on the phone. Then my mother grabbed it and started crying hysterically. Ryan, you cannot do this to us. We'll lose our house. We have nowhere else to go. You're our son. I was your son, I replied. But you made it clear that Emma isn't your granddaughter, so that means I'm not your son either. They tried every manipulation tactic they could think of. Guilt trips about family loyalty and obligation, sob stories about becoming homeless elderly people, promises that they'd treat Emma better if I'd just give them another chance. I didn't believe any of it. If you cared about family, I told them, you would have treated my daughter like she belonged. Instead, you used her as free labor while spoiling Meredith's kids with money I earned. Within a week, Meredith called me absolutely furious. How could you do this to Mom and Dad? They're going to lose everything. They're your parents. How can you be so heartless over something so stupid? Stupid. I said, they had my daughter doing dishes while your kids ate ice cream and got new toys. If you think that's acceptable, then you help them. Of course, Meredith couldn't help because she was broke, too, and had been relying on handouts from her parents, which were funded entirely by my money. About 6 months after I cut them off, the inevitable happened. My parents lost their house to foreclosure. The bank auctioned it off, and they had to move into a tiny, rundown apartment in the worst part of town. My mother had to get a job working overnight shifts at a convenience store, dealing with difficult customers and cleaning bathrooms for $12 an hour. My father started delivering food for various apps, working 12-hour days just to make ends meet. The irony was delicious. These people who had looked down on common laborers and service workers were now discovering exactly how difficult those jobs really are. Dad, who used to complain about fast food workers being too slow, was now racing against delivery time limits to earn $8 per delivery. Mom, who used to demand premium customer service everywhere she went, was now dealing with rude customers who treated her like she was invisible. Meredith lost her apartment too when she couldn't afford rent without help from our parents. She had to move in with some guy she barely knew, taking her 2 kids into an unstable situation. Last I heard, that relationship imploded within 2 months, and she's been couch surfing with various relatives and friends ever since. The girls had to change schools because they couldn't afford their old district anymore. No more expensive toys. No more special outings. No more treats and privileges. Bella and